"Ma'am, we can't continue treatment until payment is confirmed." I stared at the woman holding the tablet like it mattered more than the child dying in my arms. "My son can't breathe," I said, tightening both arms around Zayden as his tiny chest jerked under his dinosaur pajama shirt. "Please look at him." The triage nurse glanced at the monitor beside us. Zayden's oxygen number was dropping so fast the machine couldn't stop beeping. Then another woman stepped toward me, calm like none of this bothered her. Her badge read DNISCHALPRN, billing supervisor. "If you can't make the deposit," she said loudly, making sure everyone in the waiting room heard her, "we can transfer him somewhere else." For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. "Transfer him," I looked down at my son's blue lips. "He can't even breathe." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for updates. Zayden clawed weakly at the oxygen mask covering half his tiny face. Every breath sounded thin and wet, like air was fighting to get into his lungs. One younger nurse reached for the nebulizer cart beside the wall, but Denise turned her head toward her once. "That was it." The nurse stopped moving. "I saw it happen. Everyone did. 2 months earlier, I lost my warehouse job. Then I lost our insurance. Then I started splitting my own medication in half just to keep paying for Zayden's inhalers. I came to this ER because every commercial and every sign inside this building claimed emergency care came first. But now this woman was looking at me like I was a bill she wanted removed." "Security," Denise called without taking her eyes off me, "prepare discharge paperwork." "No," my voice cracked, "you are not discharging my baby." The monitor beeped faster. People in the waiting room started staring. Somebody stood up. A woman near the vending machine covered her mouth. The younger nurse whispered, "This isn't right," but Denise shut her down with one cold look. Then Zayden's fingers slipped from my sleeve. "Help him," I screamed. Nobody moved fast enough. The oxygen number dropped lower. Then the screen went flat. Everything around me froze. I lunged over the bed, grabbed the mask off Zayden's face, and yanked the tubing up into the air. It swung loose in my hand. The oxygen line wasn't connected to anything. I held it up in the middle of the ER and screamed, "Who unplugged my son?" People jumped out of their chairs the second I screamed. Phones came out everywhere around me. "What the hell is wrong with this hospital?" somebody shouted. A respiratory therapist rushed over so fast, he nearly slammed into the younger nurse trying to reconnect the oxygen line. His hands shook while he fumbled with the tubing. "Move," I yelled at him. Zayden's little body twitched against the bed. His eyes were half open but unfocused, like he was trying to stay awake and couldn't. The second the oxygen finally connected, the machine started beeping again in uneven bursts. Then I heard it. A weak gasp. "There he is," the therapist muttered quickly, refusing to look at me. "He's breathing." "Barely." I looked around expecting someone to apologize. Nobody did. The staff looked nervous instead of concerned, like they were scared of getting caught more than scared my son almost died. Denise stood near the doorway, gripping her tablet tightly against her chest. "Watching." The younger nurse touched my arm carefully. "Can you come with me for a second?" "I'm not leaving him." "You can still see him from the hallway," she whispered urgently. "Please." I followed her just outside the curtain divider, keeping my eyes locked on Zayden the whole time. The nurse lowered her voice immediately. "He should have been admitted the moment he came in," she said. "His oxygen levels qualified him for emergency respiratory intervention." I stared at her, then why wasn't he? She hesitated and glanced over her shoulder toward Denise. "She's been forcing uninsured patients into transfer status before they officially enter critical care. If they aren't fully logged," her voice dropped lower, "the hospital numbers stay lower." For a second, I couldn't process what she said. So this wasn't an accident. This was intentional. I suddenly remembered every overdue notice sitting on my kitchen counter. Every night I skipped meals to make sure Zayden had medication. Every warning I heard about this hospital before I brought him here anyway, because I thought emergency rooms were supposed to save people first. Instead, my son almost died over paperwork. Then Denise appeared beside us. Is there a problem here? She asked sharply. The younger nurse stepped back immediately. Denise looked directly at me. You are causing a scene in a medical facility over an equipment misunderstanding. I felt my hands shaking, my son flatlined. It was a temporary equipment issue. No, I snapped. Somebody unplugged his oxygen. She ignored me and quickly grabbed paperwork off the counter before a doctor walking into the room could see it. That doctor looked at Zayden's monitor once, then looked toward Denise. And Denise gave him a subtle shake of her head. The doctor frowned immediately. Then he looked back at the monitor again. His expression changed. Why, he asked quietly, is this child not already in the ICU system? What do you mean he's not in the system? The doctor asked louder this time. The entire ER heard him. Denise stepped in fast. We were still evaluating transfer options. I stared at her in disbelief. Transfer options, he stopped breathing. The doctor looked at the monitor again. This child should have been admitted the second he arrived. A woman near the vending machines suddenly stood up holding her phone toward us. I recorded everything, she said. Nobody came when those alarms started going off. That changed the whole room. People started talking all at once. They ignored her. That baby almost died. They were arguing about money first. Denise's expression hardened instantly. No one is authorized to record inside this facility. She walked toward the woman with the phone, but all that did was make more people lift their phones too. A man near the front desk pointed his camera directly at Denise. You're already live, he warned her. Thousands of people are watching this. Security guards rushed into the ER, but instead of calming everyone down, the room exploded louder. They're trying to cover it up. You can't deny treatment to a child. I stayed beside Zayden's bed trying to steady my breathing, while the oxygen machine continued chirping beside him. Then I felt something slide into my hand. The younger nurse. I looked down. A printed intake sheet. My stomach tightened the second I saw the timestamp. 11:42 p.m. That wasn't possible. I remembered checking the dashboard clock when I carried Zayden through those ER doors. 11:03. They changed the records. I looked up slowly at Denise. You lied. Her jaw tightened. Excuse me. You changed his arrival time. For the first time all night, I saw her lose control for half a second. You are emotionally distressed, she said sharply, and creating confusion during active treatment. My son almost died because you delayed treatment. And if you continue disrupting hospital operations, she snapped back, security can remove you from the building. The live stream camera swung toward my face as people in the waiting room started yelling again. Then the doctor stepped between us. Enough, he said firmly. This child needs pediatric ICU now. Denise folded her arms. Financial authorization hasn't cleared. The room went silent. Even the security guards looked uncomfortable. Then the younger nurse grabbed the desk phone herself. I'm calling pediatric emergency response, she said. Denise whipped around. Do you understand you could lose your job for this? The nurse's hand shook, but she kept dialing. A few seconds later, 2 hospital administrators rushed into the ER holding phones in their hands, both staring at the livestream. Then one of them looked directly at me. And stopped cold. His face changed immediately. Wait, he said slowly. Are you the woman who filed that complaint last year? The noise around me faded for a second after he said that. I recognized him immediately. He had been standing outside another hospital room months earlier after my mother died, waiting for treatment that never came. You remember me, I said quietly. The administrator's expression tightened fast. This isn't the place to discuss. My mother begged for help in this hospital, I cut in, and nobody came until it was too late. The waiting room went quiet around us. Denise grabbed the administrator's arm and pulled him toward a side office near the nurse's station. The door didn't shut completely behind them. I stayed beside Zayden's bed while voices slipped through the crack. You told me those cases were buried. We cannot discuss this here. Why wasn't central monitoring active? If legal finds out. Then the door slammed shut. Outside the ER entrance, flashing red and blue lights reflected through the glass doors. Reporters were arriving now. The live stream had spread far beyond the waiting room. Inside the ER, staff members suddenly looked panicked. Computer screens disappeared. Papers got shoved into drawers. Nurses stopped making eye contact with each other. The younger nurse stepped beside me again, her face pale. "This isn't the first time," she admitted quietly. "I've seen uninsured patients transferred before doctors could escalate treatment." I looked through the glass doors as a pediatric emergency team finally wheeled Zayden toward ICU. And that's when the realization hit me fully. My son didn't almost die because the ER was overwhelmed. He almost died because someone decided he wasn't worth the cost. Then state health investigators walked through the front entrance. Everything changed instantly. Conversation stopped. One investigator walked straight to the nurses' station and held up his badge. We received multiple emergency complaints involving treatment interference and falsified patient records. Denise rushed toward a nearby computer. Nobody accesses hospital systems without authorization. But the doctor who challenged her earlier was already standing at a printer, pulling out stacks of papers. "These charts show delayed respiratory intervention," he said firmly, "and altered intake timestamps." Denise's voice sharpened. "Stop printing those immediately." He ignored her completely. Security guards shifted nervously, while investigators spread across the department, questioning staff members one by one. For the first time all night, I saw real fear on Denise's face. A few minutes later, the ICU doors closed behind Zayden. Through the small window, I finally saw him connected to stable oxygen while nurses surrounded him properly this time. Relief nearly knocked the strength out of me. Then I noticed movement down the hallway. Denise was hurrying toward the records room, carrying a black shred bin against her hip. Before she reached the door, 2 investigators stepped directly in front of her. "Ma'am," one of them said firmly, "step away from those files." By sunrise, the entire records department was locked down. Investigators blocked off the hallway, while hospital employees stood around whispering in panic. Denise kept insisting the files in the shred bin were routine financial documents, but nobody believed her anymore. Not after the videos. Not after the witnesses. And definitely not after what they found in the hospital system. Over the next several hours, the truth started unraveling piece by piece. The hospital had an internal policy targeting uninsured emergency patients. Instead of immediately classifying severe cases as critical admissions, administrators pushed staff to delay official intake long enough to avoid expensive emergency reporting requirements. That delay protected hospital performance numbers and protected executive bonuses. Investigators uncovered emails discussing containment windows and non-funded respiratory cases. Some staff members had even been instructed to place emergency patients into temporary transfer status before doctors could escalate treatment. Denise had been overseeing the process personally. But the worst part came later. Backup server logs showed multiple staff alerts warning that Zayden's oxygen levels were crashing, while treatment was delayed. Someone knew exactly what was happening. And somebody still disconnected his oxygen support after I challenged the billing delay. When one of the ICU doctors finally sat beside me, his face looked exhausted. "If the oxygen had stayed disconnected another few minutes," he said carefully, "your son would not have survived." I covered my mouth and completely broke down beside Zayden's hospital bed. Nobody tried to silence me this time. Nobody told me I was overreacting. The younger nurse started crying too. "I should have reported this months ago," she whispered. "I was scared to lose my job." The doctor who confronted Denise earlier stood near the ICU window with his arms folded tightly. "I suspected administrative interference for a while," he admitted, "but every complaint disappeared before we could prove anything." Now there was proof everywhere. By that afternoon, the livestream had spread across the country. News stations replayed the footage of me holding up Zayden's disconnected oxygen tube while screaming in the ER. Former patients started coming forward online with their own stories. Delayed treatment. Ignored alarms. Sudden transfers after insurance questions. By the next day, protesters lined the sidewalk outside the hospital demanding arrests. Denise was escorted out through a side entrance, while investigators carried boxes from her office. The senior administrator, resigned after leaked emails revealed executives were receiving financial bonuses tied directly to reducing uninsured emergency admissions. Then came the lawsuits. State regulators suspended parts of the hospital's emergency intake operations pending investigation. Federal agencies began reviewing previous patient deaths connected to delayed treatment complaints. Attorneys flooded the hospital with subpoenas. And somehow, in the middle of all of it, people kept asking for me. The same woman Denise tried to throw out of the ER became the main witness investigators relied on. Weeks later, reporters interviewed me outside the courthouse. One of them asked, "What kept you from leaving that night?" I looked down at Zayden, sitting beside me holding the stuffed dinosaur an ICU nurse had given him before discharge. "Because my son knew he was dying," I answered quietly, "and I knew they wanted us gone before anyone noticed." Community donations helped pay for Zayden's recovery equipment after he finally came home. Months later, the hospital agreed to a major settlement and permanent policy changes, while criminal investigations into record tampering continued. One night, weeks after everything ended, I stood in the doorway of our apartment watching Zayden sleep peacefully beside a softly humming oxygen machine. Alive. Safe. I thought about Denise telling me to take him somewhere else. Then I looked at my son breathing steadily in his bed because I refused to walk away. The night they tried to erase my son became the night the whole hospital got exposed.